Hey guys, this is Brent Hall from Lightbender's Visuals, and I just wanted to make a quick video here to accompany a blog post I did yesterday about landscape photography and how to get the best images out of a poor situation. So like in this picture here, you'll see that I showed up to Meteor Crater in Arizona and I'm just traveling through, so I don't really have control over how long I can stay and all of that. And there's not a cloud in the sky, it's high noon, it's just a horrible time to be photographing, but it's Meteor Crater and I'm only there for a minute. So what do? I want to make this image as good as I can, and to do that I'm going to do a couple of things. The best you can do in camera is you can get your composition right and you can get your exposure and all of that stuff right. If you look at my histogram here, it's pretty decent. You know, we've got a little bit of crushed blacks, but we're going to fix all that. So I'm going to walk you through the steps, and in the blog I did a before and after image, and this is it. So this is going to be the visual accompaniment to, we're going to recreate that and I'm going to walk you through it. So we're going to start here in camera raw and we're going to just adjust some things that need adjusting. So looking at the histogram again, the first thing is we're going to bring these blacks out a little bit until here they're no longer smashed against the left side there. That means your blacks aren't blown out anymore. And we're just going to do some basic exposure tweaks. I'm not going to go into this too much because this is kind of the basic stuff, and the meat of what we're going to do is going to be in Photoshop. And again, that's not going to be too much either. It's just all these little things that are going to add up. So I'm just going to go in here and make sure that everything looks good in camera raw and do my basic global tweaks first. And I am using a really wide angle lens, and I'm using a Rokinon 14mm. And so the problem is that when you do this here, enable lens profile collections, there is no Rokinon in here, so they don't have one of that. So I found you can make your own, but the closest that I've found that works really well for this particular distortion is going to be the Canon 14mm f2.8L, the original version, not the version 2, because that version 2 was better. So this one is closer, but there's still a little bit of vignetting there, so that helped a lot. So then I'm going to go into manual, and I'm just going to drag out that vignetting just a hair more to make it a little more presentable. So okay, so I have all of my basic tweaks there. I'm still looking at my histogram and I'm happy with that. I think that looks a little bit better. I think I'm gonna desaturate the blues just a hair because you can see they're kind of starting to band a little bit, and we don't like that. Well, that's hue. That's the wrong one. So I'm gonna pull the saturation down just a little bit, and I'm gonna bring the luminance up just a little bit. So I think that helps because again, the focus here is not the sky. I don't want to be drawing too much attention to it, which is why I took it mostly out of the frame to begin with, because we're staring at this crater. All right, so I think I'm gonna do a little bit, warm it up just a little bit. Always make sure your white balance is good, whether you do it in camera or if you're shooting raw, then you have the ability to do it in post like I'm doing now. Just always be aware of that and make sure that your white balance is how you want it. A lot of people get caught up in all of this stuff down here and then forget to do their white balance, and it ends up looking a little off sometimes. So we're good there. So I'm going to open up right into Photoshop. Now we're going to be doing mostly, there's a lot of ways to do this, and there's no really right or wrong ways. It's just with how much time you want to spend and how comfortable you are with manipulating things in Photoshop. So this is going to be a more general and easier way to do it, and we're going to do that using these here. These are the adjustments, and we're going to make some masks over here because we don't want global adjustments for the most part. I just want to, my goal here is I want to accentuate the rocks and the canyons in this crater and the shadows and the highlights, and I want to show that depth that's lacking, because this is a very dull looking image at a very dull lighting situation. It's very bad, so we want to fix that. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to start with a levels here, and I'm just going to work with the midtones, and this is a very general thing. So I'm just going to slide these over until I see a lot of the areas that I'm going to be looking at are starting to take shape and get a little more contrast, a little darker. And again, this is very broad. Anywhere in there is just fine. I don't need to mess with anything else, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure you click on the mask, and I'm going to hit Control I for invert. And that brings me back, so everything, the mask is completely, the levels is completely hidden. And so now I'm going to hit the B for the brush tool. It's a shortcut, and then I'm going to use the bracket keys above the enter button for resizing my brush. So those are a couple of really quick, hotkeys and shortcuts that'll really help you out. So then you can hit the X button to toggle here between your two colors, and if you paint with white when your mask is black, then it's going to reveal your mask. If you paint with black, then it's going to cover it back up. So it's easier than doing like an eraser tool or something. So now what we're going to do is I'm just going to go quickly through here, and oh yeah, I like to stay, when I'm doing stuff like this, somewhere between 25 and 30% or so for the opacity of my brush, because I don't need it to be 100%. And if you just paint over it 3 times at 30%, well, then you're going to be at 90%. So that's pretty close. And I'm just going to paint in here some of these areas that I feel are going to show the contours of the rocks and the terrain a little bit better, because we really want to get that sense of texture and depth in here. And again, this is all subjective, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's just from looking at lots of landscape photos and editing and all this stuff, you get faster and better at it with seeing what needs to be fixed and what can be fixed and what you can really make pop. And then, of course, the worst part is if you're doing a lot of these in sequence, if like you came back from the Grand Canyon or something and you have hundreds of photos and you're starting to edit them all at once, the downside is then that you may start to over edit and you may start to push it too hard, and you won't see that right away because you're editing. It's just like when you're writing a paper, you can't catch all your grammatical errors as you're writing them or right after, because your mind is fresh with what you've just done. And it's the same thing with photo editing. Your brain is focusing on what you're editing, and you get in a rhythm, and then you can't see really. So it's always good to edit in moderation and then step back and wait a little while and then come back. And definitely, the best way to check yourself is turn on and off, and already you can see just a huge difference in this texture here. It's really starting to come out, and you're starting to feel like you're looking into a crater and not just some flat, dull landscape. And that's the ultimate goal here. So again, I'm just, this is just looking for all the shadowy areas that I feel like are probably natural contours, because again, when you're looking at photos, you really lose the ability to perceive how you did when you were actually there. And so I'm trying to look for all these places that I think would have actually had more depth to my eye when I was there, and I'm just making those come out a little bit more. I'm not going to mess with this region at all. That's so yeah. Again, see, we're kind of pushing the shadows here to, everything's kind of guiding you in to this center area, and that's those are called leading lines, and those really help visually when you have a really dull image. if you can accentuate a leading line or even create one that wasn't there to begin with, that's really going to help with your composition. Because again, this was a very boring day. Like I said, not a cloud in the skies, noon, horrible lighting, and it's just, what are you going to do? You want to take a picture of it because you're there, and it costs money to get in, and you're not likely going to go back anytime soon because it's in the middle of nowhere. So we make the best of what we have, and this is a quick and easy way of doing that. So it doesn't take too long. That's really, that's about all I want to do. One thing I'm probably going to do is, let's see if this, and it may work, it may not, but instead of just overkill and repainting and repainting and repainting, you just get the basic paint. Like I said, I'm at 26 opacity. So then I'm just going to hit Control J, and that's going to make a new copy of the layer that I was just on. And so now you can see that that basically doubled everything I did. Well, that's way too harsh. That's way too much. So what I'm going to do is come over here and take the opacity of this entire layer down and just see. And again, so it's just a little bit poppier there. It adds it just a little bit more. And so you can see the final result when I take both of those away. We turned, in just a matter of minutes, we turned a very boring, typical landscape photo into something that's got a little more pop and a little more depth, and just made it as interesting as we could while still keeping it realistic. Again, there's a million things you can do in Photoshop, but from posting the pictures that I do and the pictures that you want to see, not everything has to be award-winning photos or crazy compositions. I mean, I could put all kinds of things in here and put fake skies and clouds, but that's just not necessary for 99% of the images that you do. You just want a good picture of a place that you were at, and a couple of minutes in Photoshop can help get you that. So again, this was just the visual aid to kind of go along with the blog that I posted, and that'll be in the link below. And you can check that out to see. I posted a few other pictures there and gave a few other landscape tips on how you can get slightly better images with just a little bit of effort while you're out and about at these amazing places, or even if you're not at an amazing place, at any place. So again, everything will be in the description, the links below, and you can follow that blog and check out the other images and see what I did to those. And I hope this helps you not only with your Photoshop and getting better in post, but the best thing about doing the kind of stuff like this is that it helps you become a better shooter overall. And when you start doing this stuff in post, when I take pictures nowadays, I don't just look through the camera and think, okay, how can I make this better in camera? I take the picture thinking about what it is I'm going to be able to do to this in post. So the more you do that, the more that will stick in your head, and the more it will help you eventually get better, not only taking pictures, but with editing them and the process as a whole. So again, thanks for watching. If you like this, let me know, and I'm gonna try to start doing this more regularly with the blog posts that I do. And so follow along there. Either subscribe to the channel or follow me on Facebook and Instagram if you want to see more of that stuff. And thanks again.